This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agnew.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Martin Lukac. He is the co-founder and CTO of Nexleaf Analytics. Martin got his PhD from UCLA, building one of the first large-scale wireless seismic networks. He and his co-founder started Nexleaf in Garage in 2009, and today their technology monitors vaccine refrigerators in 28,000 health facilities across 30 countries, protecting vaccines for 86 million kids. Doc Martin, welcome to the show. Hello, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for that intro. And thank you for having me.
Was that all accurate? Even your name? Did I get the name right? I feel like I can't.
Name was right. The numbers are a little higher now. Our official numbers will come out at the end of March.
Beautiful. All right. So where did you grow up? And did that have an impact on you being an entrepreneur?
I grew up in Southern California. My parents were immigrants from Eastern Europe. I would say that maybe had a little bit of a motivation for me to be an entrepreneur because they came from nothing. They escaped communism. They came here and built a whole life. And yeah, so I think that I would say less the place, more the people.
And what did they do for work?
My dad's a doctor. He's an eye
Okay.
doctor. So he's now retired.
All right. Very cool. I love the immigrant to doctor story, especially making it successful here in America. What was the first business you started after? And I know the answer to this, but I have to ask you, what was the first business you started?
First business is the one I'm in right now.
There it
It's
is.
Nexleaf
All
Analytics.
right.
So,
That makes it nice and easy as there's no back. No, this. All right. So I am very curious about the wireless seismic network. As just a nerd in general and a lover of nerdy sounding things, what is that and why did you do it?
so when I was in grad school, I was in this center that was built around specifically studying and researching. Back then, it was called sensor networks. Now it's called IoT. So this is early and mid 2000s. And so it was a bunch of computer science departments around a bunch of schools, not just doing research for the sake of research, but actually working with other scientists to research, to help them do their research with this technology. And so I was helping seismologists. I also worked with some people studying birds. My co-founder was studying arsenic poisoning in groundwater. And, every sort of computer science and computer engineering student was kind of in a different space, but it was all the same thing, this technology and wireless technology and collecting data.
How long did that take? What was the process? Yeah, it seems incredibly. And also, you're in a third world country, right? You're all over the place.
Well, for the seismic networks, for me, that was in Mexico and in Peru. So we were working with seismologists at UCLA, and they were putting a transect, it was about 100 stations in Mexico, from Acapulco north through Mexico City all the way up. And most of them were wirelessly connected to each other. So back then you didn't have Starlink, you didn't have cellular networks. And so we literally set up mostly off-the-shelf Wi-Fi links going 5 to 20 kilometers each and creating a daisy chain of these with a couple places along the line that actually had internet. So we could get the data in near real time.
Okay. Wow. So how did you turn that, or what did you learn from that you kind of carried into Nexleaf? Because everything I know about you, which isn't much yet, but there feels like there's a through line, kind of brought you to the next thing that you did.
So both my co-founder Nitya and I realized when we were doing this, we were working with these scientists and this was all new to them. Normally they send out a grad student in the field to collect data, or they put out a data logger and they come back to it 6 months later. And now all of a sudden they're getting data right away or within a day or two. And, we're software engineers and we're just oh, you need help dealing with all this new data. You need help dealing and processing it and analyzing it and figuring out what to do with it. That's what we were doing. It wasn't just the technology. It was also almost this people part of it, of working with people to figure out how to make use of this technology in this system. And so that's sort of the through line to Nexleaf, because with Nexleaf, it's not just about selling, oh, here's a device, it'll get you data. It's let's figure out how to make use of this, especially in the context we work in, low and middle income countries, where there may not be the resources or the expertise to, like you give FedEx some new sensors, they're like, yeah, we got internal teams, we'll figure this out, right? You go to any Ministry of Health and it's like, okay, yeah, we have a couple champions here that'll own this, but how do we get the rest of the country and the rest of the system making use of these data and these systems?
Yeah, and I remember you talking about that when we talked before the show, and just that whole world it's like as you get older, you realize there's just entire worlds and universes that you may never even know exist your entire life. Like that's probably one of them. If I didn't talk to you around, hey, this is how the Ministry of Health like absorbs a new technology or data, like I would never have known that, right? So back me up to like, you guys are sitting there and you're like, we have either a problem, out there that we want to solve, or we have these resources to do this. What was the first step? Like, what did you guys do? Like, how did you pick what you were going to work on?
So we don't do this anymore. I just want to sort of clarify that. But it was my co-founder had some colleagues working in the clean cookstove space or clean cooking space. And this is, again, one of those things that's like, no one knows this is a problem. I'll give you the really short pitch on it. So every day, 2 or 3 billion people light a fire to cook their meals. All the soot and smoke from cooking that have major health impacts. There's more deaths from this inhalation and complications from all this pollution than malaria, HIV, and TB combined. So it's a massive global health crisis, and like, no one knows about it. And my stats may be out of date since we haven't been in this space for 5 years, but this is the context we were in back then. And so what was going on is there was a number of organizations that were building these what are called clean cookstoves, these contraptions that try to burn the same types of materials or pellets or other things in a lot cleaner ways to create a lot less soot. So you get more complete combustion and all that. And they were, back then, they were literally putting these out there and saying, look, we put out 10,000, we've had impact, right? You go back a few months later to where they had these deployed or given away, and they're either broken or no one's using them. So we had been talking to and starting to work with these researchers and NGOs that were like, no, we can't keep doing it this way. We need to get some data around this, and we need to figure out how to use this data to improve this whole intervention, this whole process of trying to get people to adopt and make use of these cookstoves.
So what was the answer? You did a great build up there. What was the solution? I have to know. What did you guys come up with?
The solution was we took this technology, remotely monitoring the temperature of these stoves, and we started tracking it. And what we did with these collaborators was you'd come back a month or two later and you'd ask the women who were cooking, like, hey, how's this going? How do you like it? And they would say, oh, this is great. And you go, oh, wait, hold on. I can see here that you haven't been using it. Are you sure it's great? And that would completely open up the conversation. And so you would start getting feedback. You'd start understanding what works and what doesn't work. And you then have the even harder task of trying to get that information to get processes to change around these people that are funding it, the people that are building it, and trying to sort of create essentially like a good product loop where the key thing is getting the folks that are funding this to demand, I need to see data to know this is working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's another problem that just didn't have even the information needed to start to solve the problem, right? It feels like that's been, if there's a through line, that's what it is. So what was next? You guys did the cook stoves, and then you were like, all right, we've fixed this. Now
we're not in that space anymore, but we're proud of the influence we had in the sector to get them to start using data. It took maybe 3-4 years, and then everyone was saying, we need data, and we were like, yes.
Yeah, I do love it.
The next was, so we were obviously monitoring temperature, and these sort of tech nonprofits, public benefit spaces are quite small. And so some colleagues were like, hey, you guys should be monitoring temperature of vaccine refrigerators, right? Because as you know, vaccines need to stay cold. Most of them need to stay cold, otherwise they go bad. And so there's lots of refrigerators all across Africa and South Asia in these remote health facilities, and no one knows if they are working or not. And so it's the same sort of cycle of, oh, there's not data being used here when there's, a couple $1 billion a year spent to buy and subsidize vaccines for the 80 poorest countries, do we know if this is an effective intervention?
Mm-hmm.
And short of going out and sampling blood from lots and lots of people, you can start working to make sure that supply chain, all those refrigerators these vaccines are going through, are working. And so we were very quickly able to, I wouldn't say pivot, it was sort of adapting what we had instead of
Mm-hmm.
monitoring hot things to monitor cold things. And we were doing this, I should find some pictures for you, but we literally had a cell phone in a box with a temperature sensor connected through the headset jack. And so this was there, we set up, and in a few hundred facilities, we set out to prove like, hey, even in these remote facilities that have, 1,000 or 2,000 doses of vaccines, it's worth it to monitor it. It's worth it to sort of drive an understanding of are these refrigerators working? Because at the time, no one was looking at this sort of last mile. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the most important points in the supply chain. So, yeah.
It's been 13 minutes and 10 seconds, at least on my timer. We missed a few minutes the pre-show, but we haven't mentioned revenue or money or
Ah,
income or anything. And I think it says a lot about you in general. And that's obviously the next question is not just how you monetize this stuff, but how do you balance being this, kind of altruistic guy with this mission or missions and revenue? And it's kind of like good and evil almost, right? Because you need the one to fund the other. And it's how do you guys approach this? Obviously, it's like a co-op grocery store or whatever. It's what do you do with the money at the end of the night? And it's I don't know. So how do you guys approach that? And has it been something you guys kind of openly talked about at the beginning?
yes. So from the very beginning, we actually chose to be a nonprofit because we felt like we needed folks to, especially since we were looking at that cook stove space initially, we needed people to, you know, dispel any myths they had about like social enterprises.
Mm,
Even, early 2010s, that was still kind of a new thing. And so after a few years, we ended up with kind of a split model where, because we're a nonprofit, doesn't mean we can't have profit.
mm-hmm.
We still have profit, but that has to go back into the company. And so we actually sell IoT devices and services, devices that we manufacture, but we also get grants and foundation funding. And that's focused on doing exactly that cycle we talked about earlier of figuring out, okay, here's this technology, Ministry of Health, champions here. Let's figure out how to get your policies, practices, everything adjusted or set up so that you can make use of this and actually get an ROI from these
Mm-hmm.
systems. And we do our best to try to price and set all that stuff up so that we can sustain ourselves and continue to have impact by either growing to more countries or potentially growing to new verticals and new areas. So it's expanding impact, and we want revenue so we can expand our impact.
Just explain the salary piece. A guy like you start a nonprofit. Obviously, most people are like, well, they just don't make money, or like the guys don't get paid, or like whatever. And then you guys have been around for several years now, so I would have to imagine that. Well, it's like the finance. I mean, obviously not numbers, but just in general, how does paying yourself work when you start a nonprofit? Or how does it change as you? And this doesn't need to be obviously like a full breakdown of how nonprofits are, but just from a co-founding perspective or a founding perspective, how does that work?
So we within the first 6 months, because we were very quick and very good at getting a grant, I was getting paid. And then a couple of years later, both the co-founder Nathan and I, we sort of were like, you know what? Let's take this a little more. Well, sorry, we were taking it seriously, but let's take the payment and what the value that the people we hire and ourselves
Mm-hmm.
more seriously. And so we basically came up with, most organizations will have like a compensation philosophy. And what we do is we benchmark and we target to pay people, I think it's a little above the median that people in equivalent roles would get in nonprofit tech companies. And so we don't want to underpay people. We want to pay people the value that they're worth and, for what they're contributing to the
Mm-hmm.
impact we're driving. And so, and there's a lot of, I could always find a couple of the names offline, but there's a lot of people out there advocating that you can't go in as a nonprofit and underpay people, underpay your staff, underpay everyone, because that's a lie, right? That's then claiming like, hey, we could have this impact, and the only way to do it is if we sacrifice everything, right?
Right. Right.
If you really want to have impact and you really want to prove sustainability and that you can carry this on and it's not just a blip on the radar, like, yeah, we proved this one thing and it worked and then it all fell apart, like you have to pay people well. So the same thing happens with like overhead. There's like all these discussions with nonprofits when you apply for grant. It's like if someone sees that their overhead, there's like that general, this general percentage you apply on top of everything for like your administration and
Mm-hmm.
just management and all that stuff. Like if it's too low, you really shouldn't take that nonprofit seriously. Of course, if it's too high, you shouldn't take them seriously either. But right, you want your nonprofits to be able to sustain themselves and manage themselves and not just have every dollar spent be precisely to the project they're delivering,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's this whole overhead that's needed. And if you don't cover that, you can't sustain yourself. So
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit before too. I hate the word culture at this point just because it's like been beaten to death. But like, I would have to assume working at a nonprofit tech company feels different in some capacity, right? And we kind of mentioned like some people don't get the mission, but for the most part, like everybody's kind of in on this mission. Which, if you're working at a SaaS company making like a bank app, like is really everybody like in on that mission? Like, sure, like to get the quarterly bonus or whatever, and to like leave as quickly as possible. But like, so have you found that to be true? Is there something different-ish about the people that you guys find that like want to kind of be part of something different? Because they could go work at, like you said, Comcast or Microsoft for probably 10 or 15% more and just be a corporate drone for a few years and get beaten to death and spit out. But like what like how do you guys feel about that kind of culture that you've built? And is it different than a normal quote unquote not technical nonprofit, a profit?
I think we tend to find, I mean, not, I'd say it's split, like, because there's parts of the organization that are very like program driven, like they're the ones that work with the ministries of health. And those folks generally already are in this space or in neighboring spaces in either public health or some sort of related consulting or something. Those are already folks that are kind of mission aligned and see this stuff. On kind of the engineering and product side, I think most of the folks we find, like, it's new. It's a new idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I can do something that's like public benefit that isn't just like increase shareholder value, right? It's sort of your shareholder is the folks that you're trying to have impact for. And
Mm-hmm.
pretty much everyone that we, over the years, we've had people that are just like kind of there, it's a job. But generally, I feel like most of the folks, especially the ones that stay a little longer, they appreciate the impact, they understand it, and they're driven by it. So
As a business owner, I just love the mission. I love having like a rallyable mission. You go to Disney World and it's batshit crazy because it's like a cult basic, but like these people believe in the mission, right? Like, and like I as a business owner, I love that you guys have this thing you just drive towards. Oh, that's not fake, because most of those missions are some stupid like end around way to say get us more money, right? It's like always what it is. But I love that yours is like kind of driving towards real impact and change, and you're building technology towards that. It's a really cool process. What do you want to leave? I hate to say legacy again, not my favorite word, but like you're building all this stuff. Like, are you kind of hoping to get to some level where you can kind of say, hey, I've reached the amount of people I want to reach, I've done whatever? Or do you think that maybe you don't even know what that is yet?
I would say every few years the bar moves. So like, and it changes what it looks like. The highest level metric we have of speaking of our impact right now is that we're monitoring and protecting the vaccines for 1 in 6 children born every year. And so we can, it's a big number.
A
It's
lot of
surprising.
kids.
Like I
That's a
always
lot of
get
kids.
surprised when I hear that. But
That's one of my kids, by the way. I have 6, so that's perfect. One of my 6 kids you saved the vaccine for, so thank you. I appreciate that.
and so over the years, it's either increasing that number or increasing the number of countries we're working with and protecting vaccines for. And so it's that's the growth for us. And on the sidelines, there's obviously the kind of sustainability part, not only for ourselves, but also for these systems and the ministries. Just a really quick example of that is there is, the same way we did in the cookstoves, we would like to think we had some influence in the vaccine monitoring space as well, where we were the first ones to really monitor the remote health facilities.
Mm.
Fast forward to now, and there's requirements to the fridge manufacturers that they have to build in at least data logging into their fridges.
Right.
And so getting this sector, and maybe there's another sector we'll go into at some point in the future, to sort of adapt and embrace the use of data and a cycle of improvement with that data and all of that. Like, that's sort of the end goal, to get that drive to happen. Like, if you step down from the focus on children, you step down to the the effective use of data and technology. Like, that's there's sort of a secondary mission there, independent of whether it's children or maybe solar or other medical equipment or animal vaccines or any of these other sectors that everyone's like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, right?
So you have something that you're super passionate about that you do for work, and I'm sure consumes lots of your quote unquote free time. What do you do outside of work?
Lately, the past year or two, it's been yard work and gardening, but then also a lot of home automation stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Home Assistant. So
Oh yeah, yep.
myself, I've got a whole bunch of stuff going, and then my brother also does it, and so we sort of collaborate on both our places and play with it. And that, and I'm trying to see more of the US. I've had the fortune, because of this job, to travel everywhere outside of the US, but I'm slowly trying to knock off 1 or 2 places each year in the US just to see more of it.
I love that. I love that very much. You need one of those maps with like the little thing you can scratch off or a pin in it, like everybody on Pinterest has. Well, when you come to Philadelphia, please let me know. Martin, you are fantastic. I have one final question. I'm very curious about this with you. I don't want this to be about what you do today. This one's tough, because I always tell people not about business. I don't want this to be about your business. If you could do anything on earth and you knew you wouldn't fail, what would it be? See why it's such a hard question with you? Because you're like already doing some of the shit that people would try to pick for the answer. So like that's why I'm like, I'll give you a second.
My mind's just ticking through all those things. Like, I've heard people say, better roads, oh, better power, oh, better food, right? Like, what are all these challenges that are out there?
You can get to all of them, I guess, if you can't fail. Like, maybe that's your answer. Can't fail. I also can't tell you the answer, so you gotta come up with it yourself.
I mean, one of the things I would say that, and I don't, this isn't well formulated, so maybe you could brainstorm with me for half a second here.
Sure.
Is the amount of just general conflict and strife that happens both on interpersonal levels, but then also global levels. It's like, if there was something that I could solve that I wouldn't fail at, is just like people being able to sit down and work out their differences.
Okay, you're not the first person to say that. I agree. I mean, even as simple like you see these big, the wars and stuff are going on, and obviously like the communication there is like a different level, but then you see it even like you said, interpersonal, like one-on-one. Why shouldn't we always be able to just talk to another person and like understand what they're saying? And as a guy who's been married for 15 years, I can promise you that's not the case all the time. So Martin, great answer. Thank you for being on. If people want to hear more about anything you've had to say today, how can they reach you directly?
They should just email me or hit me up on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find. Yeah, I can just Martin at Nexleaf, nexleaf.org. And I'm happy to chat about the work or anything.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we'll put all that in the link in the bio. And other than that, man, thank you so much for being on. We'll catch up with you soon, and best of luck, and keep saving the world, because we need people like you. All right. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. See you, Martin. Later.
Bye.